Hi, I'm Venus, and thank you for checking out my podcast today. You know what? It's been a little over a year since the first episode launched, and I'm really proud of how far it's come in such a short time. My hope is that I can continue to be able to share my love for this beautiful and sexy relationship dynamic. If you haven't already, please visit venuscuckoldress.com, and you'll find a wealth of helpful resources, some sexy stories, and of course, the Venus Vault. The Venus Vault is a look into my encounters from behind the bedroom door. And now on venuscuckoldress.com, there's a shop where you can buy merchandise. So whether it's something that's funny, sweet, sexy, or totally discreet, there'll be something for everyone. All right, now let's get started so you can enjoy this episode. Here we go. On this episode of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast, Drew Marston of Spades magazine is here to set the record straight on where that term came from, the spade. And is it derogatory or is it something else? He dug deep. He did all of his homework, and he's here to share what he found out. And I think you're going to find this very surprising.
I have, as my uncle used to say, been black all my life. And I have never, ever heard spade used as a derogatory term. And so I just kind of began to look it up and tap into like my nerd side and look up the history of it. And so a friend of mine who's an etymologist, studies the origins of words, kind of helped me out with this. Words have meaning, and I think we have to understand the origins of them and then the correct meanings of them. And sometimes those aren't always clear. And then I also think that we also have to take back those terms in many ways and show that there can be positivity and just great things that can be associated with those things, and not necessarily some of the negative things that some people may have meant about those things.
Welcome to the Venus Cuckoldress podcast, a place to learn all things cuckolding for the curious, the passionate, and the sexually empowered woman who wants it all. Make sure you go to venuscuckoldress.com to subscribe to the podcast and check out the Venus blog. And of course, if you love it, share it. Now, sit back, make yourself comfortable, and enjoy the show with your host, Venus.
Welcome to this episode of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast. I'm your host, Venus. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today is a really cool episode. I'm super excited to bring this to you. I have Drew Marston, who is the publisher of Spades magazine, is going to talk to me about a really interesting topic. But first, I want to mention that I'm really, really excited to announce that the Venus Cuckoldress podcast has made its way into the top 1.5% stats for podcasts worldwide. So I am thrilled. I am just beyond excited and happy and proud of those numbers. And I just want to say thank you to all of the people who have taken the time to listen and appreciate and enjoy this podcast. So thank you so much. We are just about to hit the 500,000 downloads mark, which I find is just incredible considering it's only been just over a year that I have had this podcast. So thank you so much to everybody who has enjoyed this podcast so far. All right. So why am I talking about the spade on today's episode? So many of you know already that I call myself a queen of spades, very proud to call myself a queen of spades. And a queen of spades is a woman who has a sexual preference for Black men. And I have 3 Queen of Spades tattoos, which basically is like a symbol of my love and adoration for Black men, especially for me within the cuckolding lifestyle. There are many other women who call themselves a Queen of Spades as well, and it means the same thing to them. Love, adoration, respect, worship sexually for Black men. And so when I recently heard from a couple of people online that said, hey, no, you shouldn't use that term. Spade is racist. Queen of Spades is racist. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. And because, I've been doing this now for years and years and years, and I've never heard of it in any way, shape, or form that was derogatory. So that was a real shock. There is a small minority of very vocal people who are still adamant that it is a derogatory term. But up until now, I don't think anyone has actually figured out what that word actually means, spade. So I'm here with Drew Marston to let you know exactly what it does mean. And I mean, he did all the research. It's really quite fascinating. So it's a really cool show. He's also going to talk about the Spades magazine, which I think is just awesome. It's hugely popular. If you haven't checked it out, you got to check it out. Spades magazine. He interviews lots of Queen of Spades, lots of bulls, and lots of partners of Queen of Spades. And it's just a beautiful, really slick magazine. All right, so I'm going to get started with today's interview with Drew Marston just after this quick message.
Interracial, black and white, the beautiful and sexy relationship dynamic that we love, now in a lifestyle clothing brand you can wear with pride. Don't sacrifice quality and comfort any longer. With Maison de Neige, you get both in fresh, empowering looks for every occasion, for everyone. From the streets to the sheets and everywhere in between. Check us out at maisondeneigescouture.com. Maison de Neige Couture, modern fashion for the modern revolution.
Joining me on the show today is my friend Drew Marston, and I'm super excited to have him on the show today. He is a Black bull who's been in the cuckolding hot wife lifestyle for 14 years now. And he is an entrepreneur, a published author, a lifestyle promoter, and he's also the publisher of my favorite magazine, Spades magazine. So hello, Drew. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. Why don't you say hello to all the listeners?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me on the show, Venus.
I'm so excited to talk to you. Okay, first of all, I do want to talk about the interracial part and how you promote this lifestyle and how you love it and everything like that. But I should get some background as far as like, okay, how did you land where you are today? Like, you've been in this lifestyle for a long time, but what was the process like? How did you get to where you are?
Well, it's kind of funny because I stumbled into it. I had a friend who got me involved in it, who was involved in it, and he told me about it. And so from there, it was something that I was very interested in. And I kind of met my first hot wife couple on Craigslist, which was the thing at the time, and loved that experience and just kept going and wanting more. And the rest is history, as they say.
And what about the interracial aspect of it? Like, how did you come to really love that aspect of it?
Well, I think there's always been an interracial aspect to my personal vanilla dating life. So I've pretty much gone out with mostly white women. And there was just something about when I would watch porn and different things like that, that color contrast and the difference and kind of the taboo nature of the whole interracial scene was something that was very appealing to me. And so I tended to gravitate towards that. Mm-hmm. And then when I got into the lifestyle, you find out that there is a particular interest in couples, particularly white couples, meeting Black bulls. And so that was also very appealing to me. And so that's kind of where I gravitated to because of my experiences and my interest at that time.
Right. So what about the Spades magazine? Like, where did that come from? How did that come about? I absolutely love getting the Spades magazine. I think it started as a blog though, right? Am I correct?
Yes, it did start as a blog. When I started that, the same buddy who got me into the lifestyle, we used to read a well-known blog that was around the Queen of Spades lifestyle. And it would feature different interviews with various queens of spades. But it wasn't a regular thing. It was just kind of when the author got to it. And so we really liked that. And then at some point, the blog disappeared. I think the author had some other things that they were doing in their life. And so they just stopped doing it. And so I was talking to my buddy and was talking about these different ideas about, if somebody did this blog and if they would add these different content pieces and kind of have a schedule for putting out different content. And I would love to see this person interviewed or that person interviewed, learn more about them. And he just looked at me and said, well, why don't you do it? And so that's kind of how it started. I started getting together a plan and figuring out how I was going to publish a blog, and kind of started it on a lark and put together a few posts and put them out there. And it just kind of took off from there. For 3 years, I had the blog, and then the platform that I was using at the time shut it down. Never really kind of told me why they shut it down, but they shut it down. And so in that time, I had to find a different way to kind of put that out, because there was such a clamor from fans that wanted to read that content again. And so this year, about 4 months ago, I put out the first digital version of the new Spades magazine. And so we're up to our second issue, which published earlier this month, and we're going to publish bi-monthly. It's going to be the same content that you saw on the blog. Is hopefully good content with Queens of Spades interviews, and with Queens of Spades and real bulls and people that inhabit the lifestyle and showcase that lifestyle in a positive way.
Yeah, because the lifestyle is wildly popular.
Yes,
I know that from my podcast. Anything to do with interracial is tops the charts. But I really like the Spades magazine because the interviews with the bulls are pretty cool. Like, you get to have a really good insight into, the way that they perceive things and their feelings and thoughts on it and everything like that. And I just find that so fascinating. So I'm so happy that you profile the bulls and not just the women in the lifestyle. So it's cool to read about the women as well, because each one is so different and so unique. But I really do enjoy reading about the bulls in the lifestyle. So I appreciate that part of it.
Yeah, I think you're going to see in these issues, you're going to see a variety of content covering all different aspects of the interracial lifestyle. You're going to see interviews with bulls. You're going to see interviews with Queens of Spades. You're going to see interviews coming out with partners of Queens of Spades. So you kind of get it from, the cuck or the stag version. And then also real experiences. So not necessarily an interview, but stories from people who are in the lifestyle, some of their real experiences and questions to different things that people want to know about the lifestyle. So it's going to be, I think, a really good mix of content from all corners, a little bit of something for everybody.
That's wonderful. And I love the way that you design the magazine. It's slick. It looks really nice. So good job with that.
Thanks. It was, I actually self-taught myself on how to do that. But I'm glad with the way it came out. So
I think entrepreneurs are kind of like that, right? I mean, you started blogging, you had to learn that, and now the magazine, you have to learn that, and it's, I don't know. I think for me, and with podcasting, blogging, and stuff like that, it was something you just have to do.
Oh yeah, it's a challenge for sure. The funny thing is, one of the things that took me so long to make it as a digital magazine was that I kept finding graphic designers and designers who just wouldn't work with the type of content that I was trying to put together. Right. And then I was going to be spending a lot of money. And so I just figured out, well, maybe there's a way that I can do this and make it work with my time. And once I figured out that I could actually design an issue, I was like, okay, well, doesn't look bad. And I got some approval from some good comments from some friends of mine who looked at it. And so I was like, well, let's just go ahead and put this out and see what happens. And
yeah. Yeah, for everyone who's listening to this episode, you have to check it out. It's a really beautiful magazine. It's really nice. It's called Spades Magazine. If you want to have the link, you can go to venuscuckoldress.com and click on the recommended resources page. I think you will love it. Okay, so next I want to talk about the spade. There is some controversy about where that term came from and if it is derogatory or not. And this kind of controversy I've only heard about recently, and it was a bit of a shock to me because I have never heard it used in any way other than anything that's positive and coming from a place of admiration and adoration. And so I was really surprised to hear about this, but I know that you have looked into the history of that term. And so I'm really excited to hear from you about what kind of information you were able to come up with about that.
yeah, so I've noticed the same thing, that there has been some controversy around it. I have, as my uncle used to say, been black all my life. And I've never, ever heard spade used as a derogatory term. I've been called many things and heard other different slurs, but I've never heard spades as one. And I'm not discounting the experiences of someone else who may have had that experience. It's just not my personal experience. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of curious about where that was coming from. Where was the history of this being a derogatory term? And so I just kind of began to look it up and tap into like my nerd side and look up the history of it. And so a friend of mine who's an etymologist, studies the origins of words, kind of helped me out with this. And the first written instances of it being used as a racial derogatory term was in the 1920s, early 30s. Used by two authors from the Harlem Renaissance, two Black authors, in relation to their two Black characters that they were writing about. And it was really Black characters talking about other Black characters, but using this term with a clear racial derogatory meaning. Mm. And then the next time that it's used in literature or anywhere written as a derogatory term is by a British author who is known to have stolen many of his themes from Harlem Renaissance writers, but was also kind of a provocateur. And he's in a couple of his books that he wrote about the ethnic communities of 1950s London. He uses the word spade as a derogatory term and also coins a couple of other derogatory terms in his works to describe Black people and people of color in London at that time. The original term for spade is simply for a garden tool. Mm-hmm. The first time that it comes into English language usage is by Erasmus, who is a famous scholar from the 1400s, who undertook a great project to translate a lot of the great Greek words into English. And so one of the common phrases that kept appearing over and over in a lot of Greek works was to call a spade a spade. But that in itself was a derogatory phrase. It wasn't racial. It was a bad translation of to call a fig, which was in reference to a part of a woman's body. And so it was used really as a vulgar phrase in ancient times. And for some reason, Erasmus translated it to call a spade, and it's been in the English language ever since. But there was never any recorded racial connotations to the word spade until the 1920s, 1930s, when we find it in these two works by Harlem Renaissance writers. And so for me personally, the first time I ever heard that there was anything racially derogatory about it was in an article that I read in The Atlantic in around 2012, 2013, that talked about the different racial origins of common phrases, but it was a very vague allusion to the fact that there might be some history there with spades, but it didn't say anything. It didn't pinpoint anything directly about where that history came from. So
that is so interesting, like fascinating. I don't know how you did all of that research, but that is amazing. I
had some help, but yeah, that was.
Feel like you could just do a course on this now.
Yeah, I almost feel like I can maybe add professor to one of my titles on Twitter after this. But yeah, that's so for me, I think one of the things where this comes from is where I think people aren't sure of where the origins of Queens of Spades comes from.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone's ever really found where the origins of that term or why they apply that to specifically white women who like black men or non-black women who like black men. And so there may have been some kind of motive there for that, considering that the spade is black, but that's only speculatory. That we can't say that for sure because there's no definitive proof that that's why Queen of Spades came into usage for non-black women who like black men.
Yeah, I just find it so interesting because it seems like you're right. The background of it is so unknown as far as like whoever coined that term, Queen of Spades, like what was their motivation behind that? We don't know. But given the history of the spade that you just explained, I'm wondering now if there is this kind of new definition of, a Queen of Spades. Is this as we know it? And it is something that is positive. It is something that is comes from a place of love and admiration of the person. And I'm wondering if by shining a light on this kind of vague history of possibly it being derogatory is just going to, change something that from a positive into something that's a negative. And is that really necessary? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think two things there. So words have meaning. And, I think we have to understand the origins of them and then the correct meanings of them. And sometimes those aren't always clear. But I think we have to take, for instance, our individual interactions in which if we find people who are using that word with clearly derogatory terms, clearly derogatory ways, then we should call that out. And we should call out any abusive, racist behavior within the lifestyle. We also kind of have to admit, too, that a lot of the attraction between particularly white women and black men is because that particular relationship has been so historically taboo, particularly in America.
Yeah.
And so there is some of that is, driving that attraction, not always, but some of that is driving that attraction. And so I think sometimes the reaction that has been had to the possible racial origins of Queens of Spades or the use of spades as a racially derogatory term is a placeholder for a deeper conversation that needs to be had about maybe, racial fetishes and how certain people are feeling about, they don't want to be just a skin color or a BBC. They want to be something more than those terms. And then I also think that we also have to take back those terms in many ways and show that there can be positivity and just great things that can be associated with those things and not necessarily some of the negative things that some people may have meant about those things. For instance, cuckolding. A cuckold was not a positive term for the longest time. And in many quarters of vanilla life, it still isn't a positive term. Politically, to call someone a cuck a lot of times is something to be is a very, very negative name. Very bad name that like the worst thing that you can call someone.
Yeah.
But we know now, through the growth of the cuckolding lifestyle, in large part because of voices like yours and many others that have shown that there's very there's a very positive thing about the cuckold lifestyle and about being in that lifestyle and embracing that lifestyle. And there doesn't have to be some negativity there. So I think it's also about understanding the origins and the meanings of words, but then also creating and taking back those words and putting the positivity into them.
That's a very good point. And that example about the word cuck is an excellent example. I mean, I have been, and myself and many other people in this lifestyle have been trying to sort of combat that negative stigma around the word. And these discussions around race do give us a good opportunity to really examine where we can do better in this lifestyle, where we can improve, but also to sort of combat, like you said, the negative perceptions of certain things and highlight the positives. So we've got some work to do.
For sure. And I've been part of the reason why I did a lot of the research on the origins of that word is because I wanted to put together something. And I'm still working on a piece that is still incomplete, but I'm working on a piece for Spades Mag, a future issue, in which is trying to tackle some of these issues and maybe, try to foster some conversations among some people to kind of hash these things out and get some feedback from a lot of members of the community. I mean, I think as long as we keep learning about each other and having conversations, we can do better and we can understand better and just keep moving this lifestyle in a very, very positive way.
Absolutely. I love that. So as far as projects, you've obviously got a lot going on with the magazine and you're, promoting the lifestyle on Twitter and everything like that. What kind of other projects do you have coming up that we might enjoy learning about?
Well, so I have a really big project that I'm working on that I'm hoping to have out by the beginning of the new year. Beginning of 2022. I can't really share too many details about that because I'm still working out some issues on that. But I would tell everyone to stay tuned to my social media. You'll be hearing a lot of things about that as we get into the end of fall, early winter. But as far as projects, I would say there's new issues of Spades Mag that are in the pipeline. There's a couple of them that are already finished and ready to go and just waiting for the publication date. I'm also getting more active on Reddit. And so you'll see more of Spades Mag there, as well as on a lot of the different sites like Black to White and Adult Friend Finder and FetLife and SDC as well. And so you'll be able to see a lot of those offerings and whatever we're having in the future on those platforms as well, expanding the audience a bit.
You have so much going on. I don't know how you do it all, but I appreciate it. I really do.
It's good to stay organized, and Google Calendar helps a lot.
That's amazing. I really enjoy speaking with you. I enjoy all of the experience that you have in this lifestyle and how much you love and appreciate it and promote it as well. And conversations with you are always wonderful. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode today. Where can people go to learn more about your projects?
Okay, so the main spot right now is on Twitter. You can go to twitter.com/Spades Magazine. You can also follow my Twitter account, which is Lucius Fox 87, LuciusFox 87. And on those pages, you can find all of my other pages, as well as find links to where you can find Spades Mag and all my updates of where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing, and any other places that I'm going to be at. So there's also going to be a website coming, hopefully at the beginning of the year as well. So we'll have a more centralized location where everybody can find everything, all of the links, and how to get any issues of Spades Magazine and keep up to date with what projects I have going.
That's good. Yeah, it sounds like you need a central place because there's a lot going on. Well, thank you so much for all of your incredible research that you've done on this topic. I appreciate it a lot, and I'm sure it's going to be super helpful for the whole lifestyle as a whole. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much, Venus. It is an honor to be on the show. I listen to every episode and I love what you're doing. And I'd encourage everyone to go out there and continue to support you, continue to listen to you, and sign up for your Patreon for even more benefits.
All right, that's going to be it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you go to venuscuckoldress.com. That's where you can subscribe to the podcast, and also you can submit a question or comment for the show. It's also where you can find information for the upcoming Pillow Talk events, which are always tons of fun. All right, that's it for today. We'll see you next time.
Hello, Venus Cuckoldress devotees. I'm Miss Nookie, a cuckoldress and the founder of Dating Kinky, a dating and sexy education website. I was happily introduced to cuckolding nearly 8 years ago by my partner, and I've been an enthusiastic participant ever since. And like Venus, who is beautiful and brilliant, by the way, I'm also passionate about spreading the good word on this amazingly intimate lifestyle. For example, I have a new book about cuckolding coming out April 29th, an online class based on personal experiences, research, and conversations with other happy cuckold couples, a set of 20 erotic tales about cuckolding, and finally, a weekly podcast answering cuckolding-related questions from all of you cucks, stags, cuckoldresses, hot wives, and bulls out there, co-hosted with the stunning Anne Cuckoldress and Venus herself. Want to know more? Just send an email to cuckyou@datingkinky.com. That's cuckyou, all one word, @datingkinky.com.